Hello and welcome to Just Films and That, the podcast that celebrates films we think are underrated, underappreciated, underseen, or we just really, really wanted to talk about them. I'm your host, Alice. With me, as ever, is Josh. Hello there, Josh.
Hello.
There he is, everybody. And this week it was Josh's turn to pick. He went with Monsters vs. Aliens from the year 2009. So let's get straight to it. So, Josh, you picked this week's film, Monsters vs. Aliens, from 2009. So, spoiler warning, listeners, if you haven't seen it yet. So, Josh, tell us, what is this film about and why did you pick it?
What is the film Monsters vs. Aliens about? Well,
I've got a bit of a sneaky suspicion.
It's a sociological piece about the differences. No.
I mean, sort of.
Yeah, sort of. Reese Witherspoon, she is the voice of a lady, Susan, and she wants to marry her boyfriend, fiance, Derek, and then she is struck by a meteorite which turns her into a giant, superpowered woman. The government catch her and put her in a secret facility with other,
course they do.
With other
They
monsters.
do.
At the same time, an alien called Galax invades Earth for a material called quantonium? And that is the material that gave her her powers. So he wants to get the material out of her to create his big army of clones to rule the universe. That's pretty much it. I picked this one for a few reasons. So we hadn't done a film like this for a little while. It's slightly different, although only a little bit different to Blue Velvet, which we did the other week.
Just a touch.
It's just a
smidge.
bit similar themes of abuse and
isolation and maybe not feeling like you're in the right skin or something.
Taking nitrous and all that stuff. Ears and fields. It's a little bit different. We hadn't done a sort of family-friendly, cartoony type film for a little while, and I thought it was about time we did one. I do think, having looked at the critical reception, that it's a bit underrated. I know at the time it did okay in terms of its box office relative to its budget, but I don't think it did that well. So I think it deserves a bit more love. That's why I picked it. So had you seen this before?
I hadn't seen it and not 100% sure like if I had heard of it, if I hadn't heard of it. Like it's one of those titles I think that maybe I'd sort of seen floating around out there, but hadn't really paid much attention to it.
It's difficult with this sort of film, isn't it? Because when they're released, you get all sorts of tie-in promotions. So I reckon you must have walked past a cereal box or a toy at some point, and it's limitless itself into your head and you've never thought about it again. But you do recognise the style and certain things about it. It's like I've never seen How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, hey, there's a good film.
But I would recognise the characters from it.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So no, I hadn't seen it, so this was my first time seeing it. I was quite looking forward to it. I do tend to like films like this. I'm a big fan of animation. I think it really opens the doors for creativity in terms of, characters and styles and just the way that things can look. So I was looking forward to seeing it. So for you, was this like the first time you'd seen it since the first time? Or is this one that's kind of like on the regular, maybe every year you sort of sit down and watch this?
I've watched it a couple of times. So I actually went to see this at the Pictures.
Oh, did you?
And I think we went to see it because it came out in 2009, so I would have been 18, 19 when this came out. So I'm not even the target age then to go and see it. And I think we went to see it because something else was sold out.
Okay, yeah.
So, when you go and you want to go and see, a comic book film or the big blockbuster, but it's sold out and you're 18, so you're an idiot naturally, and you didn't think to book tickets ahead. So, so I think we went to see it. I can't imagine me and all our friends going, shall we go and watch Monsters vs. Aliens? It must have been, there was something else, but I can't quite remember what. So I have seen it a couple of times since it came out. It's another one of those films that we go and see with some friends, so you develop a bit of affection for through shared experience. So I was interested I hadn't watched it for a good few years, or it could be 3-4 years since I last watched it. So I was interested to watch it again to see if it had aged or how it had changed, or watching it through the eyes of a craggly old 31-year-old adult. But yeah, but I still have a lot of affection for this film.
Mhm.
I'm getting vibes from you that you weren't that bothered though. I
That
can
might
tell. I
be
can
an
read.
accurate.
I can
You
read
can
you like
read
a book,
me. You
Oliver.
can
I
read me
can
like
read
a
you.
book.
I can read you like Bravo 20.
We've been doing this too
We have.
long.
We have.
So yeah, I wonder if that is the correct way to describe how I felt about it, is that I just wasn't that bothered. I felt a little bit underwhelmed
Mm.
and it was just kind of okay.
Yeah. So it's not
But
bad. It's just yeah.
exactly.
It's all right.
But
Yeah.
there were things that I did like about it. So
Okay.
of course, we will talk about those
course,
first.
yeah, yeah.
So it looks phenomenal.
Yes.
This is some of the best kind of animation, CGI, visual effects, whatever, that I think I've seen. Everything looked amazing. And because we're dealing with things like monsters and aliens, you can really get
Very
creative
colourful,
with
isn't
that.
it? And yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Similar with something like Evolution, where,
Mm.
there were so many different types of aliens. So you just get so many different colors, so many different textures. Along with this, there were various different landscapes as well, because if you're dealing with, space and alien creatures, that's what you get. You get kind of different spaceships and different planets. So there was a lot going on visually, and I did think it was absolutely stunning to look at.
That was the first thing that I noticed that I hadn't noticed before, because I'd never looked at it with a critical eye, which is how amazing it looks, like you say. So this was part of it. So it was released in 2009. So it's very much in the height of the let's make everything 3D to add £4 to cinema tickets craze,
Yeah,
following
definitely.
following Avatar, and you can tell that this was made to be 3D. I remember seeing films in 3D that weren't meant to be 3D. I think we went to see it was the first Thor, and I think we went to see
Oh God, in 3D.
yeah, the Green Hornet as well with Seth Rogen. Both of those were around 2010, 2011, aren't they? And I
You know
remember.
what I had to see? You know
Go
what
on.
I had to see in 3D that I really didn't want to was
Go
The
on.
Life of Pi. Went to go see that in the cinema. They only had it on A, 3D, and B, not even in IMAX. So it was a small
Yeah,
screen
so
and it
what's
was
the
3D.
point?
I was
Yeah.
gutted. That is a film that needs to be seen in IMAX 2D, please, everyone.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm
apologies.
so
As you
glad.
were.
I'm so glad that craze is over.
Oh, I hated it.
I
I
hated it.
hated it. Gave me a headache. I couldn't
Yeah.
bear it. I couldn't bear it.
I remember, they say queuing up like you feel like a really grumpy old bastard because you're like, 2 tickets in 2D, please.
2D only, forever and ever. 2D,
You
please.
can keep your glasses, sir. I will have
Yeah.
my 2D. So it's meant to be in 3D, or some of it's meant to be in 3D. There's a bit at the beginning where the guy's doing batting the bat. He's got a ball on a string on a bat, and he's batting it out, and it's clearly meant to be that the ball, reaches out the screen so that you can
Right,
see it.
yeah, I see what you mean.
But that aside, there was other things in it, just down to the style, the animation, the design, that I think look amazing. There's a bit where some guys in an Arctic research center or some sort of UFO research center, and there's a burger on the desk, and it looks like almost. It's got a really interesting mix of photorealism and cartoony. So no one in it looks like a person. They all look like caricature people, but they look more like people than, say, Pixar films from around this time. So if you look at one of the, I don't know, the first film that was made around this time would be something like Ratatouille that comes to mind. Like in that, no one looks like a person. They all look like cartoons. I mean, I love Ratatouille, but it's the style, isn't it? Whereas this, it is a lot more photorealistic, and I think that's to its credit. So that was one of the first things I noticed, was just how amazing it looks.
I think another thing as well was the cast. So obviously the cast in this is very, very good. You've got Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen, two guys who I really, really do love seeing them. Like if they're in a thing, I'll watch it. So I was really excited to see them, and they had a lot of funny moments, particularly Paul Rudd's character, I actually think was the funniest. So Derek.
The slimy weatherman
Yeah.
boyfriend.
So he's our heroine's husband, or soon-to-be husband. And he's just obviously turns out to be such a disappointment. Like after she gets turned into this giant creature, and I think at the beginning he's like really scared of her, and then at the end he's literally just like, "But what about my career?" And that's all that he ever really cared about.
And
it's really funny.
Would Mr. Oliver stay with you if you were turned into a 50-foot woman with white hair.
Of course he would. Of course
Absolutely
he would. I absolutely guarantee he would. He'd
adores
love
you.
it.
He would love
does.
it. He probably would love it, actually.
Yeah, of course he would. Big giant woman. There's just more of me then.
This is my
there?
wife,
more
the
of me to
50-foot
love.
woman. That's... Yeah, no, you are right. There's a great cast in there. Like you say, Paul Rudd, Seth Rogen. Then you got Reese Witherspoon, Hugh Laurie, Will Arnett, Rainn Wilson, Stephen Colbert, Amy Poehler,
It's a list, isn't it?
Kiefer
That's
Sutherland.
a list, yeah.
And they're all... it's one of those films where they all feel... I mean, it's hard to tell, isn't it? But they all feel like they're having quite a good time with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I particularly... Stephen Colbert is a highlight for me. Reese Witherspoon obviously carries the film, and she is the emotional heart of it, and she's pretty excellent in everything that she's in. But yeah, a highlight for me was Stephen Colbert and Kiefer Sutherland.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. I do also like that the name, I think the kind of scientific name that they come up with for Susan in her giant state or something is Ginormica.
Yeah.
That just really made me laugh. That just really got to me, that bit. Another moment actually that I did find really, really funny. So you're going to have to remind me a little bit about what happens in this scene, but they're on either a spaceship or they're in some space base, shall we say. And you've got the main characters, which is Susan, and then like her two little buddies, which is, we've got Seth Rogen and his character, which is like a blue Bob. Yeah, so he's like, what is he? A blue slime?
He's essentially
sort of...
just a blob of chemicals,
Yeah,
that
Bob
gain
the
sentience.
Blob.
Yeah, Bob, yeah.
So there's him and there's a couple of others. I think Hugh Laurie's in that group as well, isn't
Dr.
he?
Cockroach.
His character.
Yeah.
So they're walking through and they're trying to fit in with everybody. And, you know, they've got to pretend that they belong there because they're not meant to be there. They're sort of infiltrating or they're escaping because they've been locked up. So I think they managed to get some lab coats or something, but obviously they look completely different to everyone. And they pass like one of the ordinary guards, like one of the guards that's actually there. And one of them just turns around and goes to him, "Would you like a gun?" or something like that. That really did make me laugh. Can you remember the exact context behind that?
Is that when he just shoots him straight away?
Does he? Yeah.
So it's when they're on Galax. Galaxar's the villain who's voiced by Rainn Wilson, is brilliant.
Yeah.
And his whole thing is cloning himself to repopulate his own planet with himself, I think. And there is a bit where, like none of them, I think because they've just been cloned, I don't think they can recognize people who aren't them. Mm-hmm. So they just see, like how they say some animals can't see size or they can't see other animals, so like they just see the same thing all the time. I think it's meant to be that, and they just give him a gun. But that's one of the things that I really like about this film is I think it's really funny. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you found it as funny as I did, but I think there's a lot of different styles of comedy in there, and it comes back to something we've said before, which is there's things in there for the kids and there's things in there for the adults. There's lots of stuff in there that will make the kids laugh, of slapstick and people getting pinged in the face and falling off stuff and all that. Kids will love it. But there's also stuff in there that's like really meta and self-referential. So there's a bit in it where Ed Helms plays a news anchor or journalist who says something like, "UFO has landed in America, the only place UFOs ever land," and that sort of thing. Yeah. And obviously, if you're a kid, that would just go over your head because why would you understand that? Whereas as an adult, I still find it really funny. All the stuff with the president trying to be brave, I find really funny. The fact that Kiefer Sutherland appears to be playing a 100-year-old army general who says he got his tear ducts shot off in Vietnam and that sort of thing. Even just some of the silly slapstick bits where the giant needle that gets fired at Susan is she throws it back at a soldier and it hits a normal sized man in the foot, and it's just I just find it really funny. But a lot of it does come from an affection for the film where you've then gone away with your friends and quoted it and that sort of thing. So did you find it funny, or was it sort of hit and miss?
It was quite hit and miss, but I think on the whole, a lot more hits.
Yeah.
And like you say, because there's so many different species and so many different kind of characters coming together that wouldn't ordinarily be together, there's a lot of this misunderstanding and misdirection and that kind of humor. And I did really enjoy that. But no, I did think it was funny. I don't think you're completely wrong there. The other thing as well, I really like the concept. I did like the concept. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was relatively unique, and it does open the doors for creativity. And I do think that they utilized that probably as much as they could. It was really ambitious. I think you could tell it's really ambitious in its visuals more than anything. And obviously getting in a cast like that, so you can see where the effort has really gone in there, I think.
It's a big budget, I think. So I
Is it?
think one
Yeah.
of the reasons why it was considered as not doing that well is
Because they
that it
spent
was
so
almost like a
much.
$200 million budget or something like that,
Mm,
which I think you can tell in the way it looks and the cast and that sort of thing.
hmm.
But I think that is why they could do some stuff visually and some other stuff as well, because they definitely there's a lot of money in this, and I think it shows, probably as well down to the fact that it's 3D. But completely agree with you there. Love the concept. Something that I really liked, I wanted to get your thoughts on, was again something I hadn't noticed before because I'd never looked at it with this critical eye before. Was I quite like, for lack of a better term, the message of it, which is that Susan starts out as a woman who seems to entirely define herself by her partner's career. And all she
Hmm.
wants to do is marry him and move to Paris and be together. She doesn't seem to have any real ambition beyond that. Not that that's a problem. But what I really like is that it takes for her to be turned into a giant woman to then become friends with these monsters to find who she is, or happiness in something that isn't just her partner. I mean, have I just pulled that out my arse, or is that something that you quite liked, or did you notice it, or
I didn't notice that at all, I'll be honest, Josh. It
yeah.
wasn't something that I'd considered, but that certainly doesn't mean that it's not there. But when you think about it, of course, in most children's films, not that it's necessarily a children's film, but obviously aimed at a younger
Yeah,
audience,
family
they do have
films.
these
Yeah.
messages.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely think you're right, and I think that's lovely that you took that message away from it. I did not, however, and perhaps that is something that we'll mention when we move on to the dislikes
Okay,
of the
okay. Well,
episode.
okay, well, let's do that then.
So we'll move on to discussing anything that we perhaps didn't like about the film or that we would change. So Josh, what about you? What are you thinking when I come at you with this question?
It's tough, is what I'm thinking, because
Mm.
I've got a lot of affection for this film.
Oh, that's
I've got
cute
friends who will
though.
absolutely kill me if I go in hard on this film.
Sorry, I'll take the heat. I'll
Yeah,
take the
but
heat.
one thing I would say, again, trying to give a balanced argument, is I think there's some pacing issues. I think
Mm.
there's some great ideas in there, which have then blossomed into great set pieces. I love the set piece in San Francisco where she's running through an empty San Francisco as a giant woman and a giant robot's chasing her. But there are some pacing issues where it's almost like they didn't flesh out what else they wanted to do with the concept. So I think about halfway through, it takes before Galaxar, the main bad guy, gets to Earth, it goes a bit boring. So there's probably about 15, 20 minutes where, and the film couldn't have lost any time because it's more or less bang on an hour and a half. But I think they could have done more with it. What they could have done with it, I'm not too sure. But yeah, I think there's a couple of pacing issues in there. But other than that, I can't think of anything. But then I think you are going to hit me with your criticism stick.
Oh, it's gonna be a gentle sweep with my criticism stick. Don't worry, I'm not here to ruin your day. But for me, I didn't feel emotionally connected to this film at all.
Mm,
And I got to a point, it was about halfway through, where I was thinking, like, why aren't I feeling anything? And I know that I can feel, like, I've felt pretty big stuff for some of the films we've done, and I know I can feel a lot for animated films like this. Even now, when I watch Frozen, I still get goosebumps when she sings Let It Go. It's just a phenomenal moment. And they do this brilliant job. And I'm not just going to bang on about Frozen now for the next 10 minutes, but they do a brilliant job in Frozen of developing characters very quickly in the sort of first 10 minutes of the film. And with this, I felt like some of that was missing. So when this happens to Susan, obviously, so it starts with a bang, which I really do appreciate. Like, I'm here for that. It's brave, it's bold, go for it. But she gets turned into this giant woman pretty soon, and you don't know who she is. You don't know what her story is. You get a kind of vague idea about being in this maybe one-sided relationship because you get to meet Derek for a little bit, and yeah, he seems like a bit of a douchebag. So you get a little amount, I think, but that isn't developed enough for me. So then when you go with her on this journey, I just didn't care enough. I didn't care enough about her well-being, and I didn't care enough about her emotions. And when you haven't got that in a film like this, it does just feel a little bit hollow.
mm.
And I just didn't really feel anything for any of the characters. It was funny, it looked phenomenal, but I felt nothing, Josh.
I
Am I
can
dead inside? No,
no,
I'm
no,
not.
you're not. I'll be honest. I can get on board with that idea.
Hmm.
Perhaps that's where my idea before about being different's come from. That's obviously what they must have been aiming for. But I think there might be an element of concept over execution a little bit, which is you've got the monsters that are already there in the Area 51 type facility, and they are sort of just there for comedy value.
Hmm.
And I do think there was probably like you alluded to there a bit of a missed opportunity about being different and using it as an analogy or an allegory, whatever you want to call it, for being different. Whatever that is, it doesn't have to be labeled. We don't have to say it's because of X, Y, and Z. Just being different. There's plenty of films that you can think of watching as a kid that are about being different, that are there to empower kids who are different, and this could have probably been one of them. For me, it's counteracted by the fact that I think it's really funny,
Hmm.
but I could definitely see that there's a bit of a missed opportunity there.
I just think for me, a bit more character development, maybe seeing a few more scenarios, maybe like if we had some kind of prologue about Susan and her husband and maybe seeing some of their relationship or even like seeing her as a child, like maybe something happened to her as a child and then that was why that she is this way. That's why that she, like you said, like her personality is her husband and it's like she hasn't really got anything else going
Has she
on.
got a job? Has she got
Yeah,
like what
what
is?
do her parents do?
Yeah,
Like let's just see some let's see some character building, let's see some world building so that when this happens to her, when she gets upset, I get upset. When she gets angry, I get angry. Like I am good at immersing myself in
mm,
things, right?
yeah.
Even things that are shit.
Grease too. Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know
yeah.
this.
Grease
The
too.
amount
Yeah,
of films that I come on in and start saying this is
yeah.
brilliant
Grease too.
because I've
Yeah. Mm.
because I've been able to immerse myself into it and I'm there with the characters. And with this, I just wasn't. Another example I thought of as well is remember Up, take it you've seen Up.
Of course, heartbreaking, brilliant.
Yeah, well, what they do with him, I forget the
Carl,
main old man's character,
Carl.
no, Carl. So what they do with him and his wife
Mm.
at the
It's the
beginning,
most
she's not
heartbreaking opening 5 minutes
exactly
in a
5 minutes,
film
and they've done it,
that
and you're
you'll ever
there.
see.
And I do wonder, and nothing against DreamWorks, but I do think that Disney Pixar do a better job than what DreamWorks do. There are obviously some like heavy hitters with DreamWorks. There are some great films,
Yeah,
but in
Shrek
terms of
and that sort
emotional,
of thing. Yeah,
well, and I think the Road to El Dorado
yeah,
was
that's true.
DreamWorks as well.
Yeah, it
But
is. Yeah,
again, when you hark back to that, I didn't have a huge emotional connection with the characters.
no,
And I do wonder, I don't think this should necessarily be a detrimental thing. The reason that Disney Pixar try and do that is to emotionally manipulate you.
mm.
So then I just wonder if DreamWorks are a bit more like, we're not here to emotionally manipulate you. We just want to show you some nice visual
Yeah,
effects
maybe.
and have a good time.
Pixar are sort of like the abusive ex, aren't they? They're in your head. They're like, let me show you. I'm going to guess who we're going to kill next. Your imaginary childhood friend. Why don't you deal
Yeah.
with that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you deal with this? Why don't you? Why don't we show you people in the afterlife dying, ultimate death? Like,
Exactly. And I think for me, it was just missing that. It was just missing that emotional connection. Overall, that is my only
yeah.
criticism, but it's quite a big one
Mm.
because if you're emotionally connected, but I don't know, maybe some of the editing is bad, or maybe some of the sound is bad, or or this performance was a little bit off, or whatever, you can forgive all that.
Yeah.
But not. I just wasn't in it. I wasn't feeling it, and I really just wasn't that asked about what happens to the characters. So sorry, Josh.
No, I don't really have a defense for that because I think that you're right. I agree with you. There is a bit of an emotional disconnect with the film. I would imagine the amount of money that's spent on these films, although I don't know, I'm not in the industry, that might be a choice. That maybe they go, what can we do to differentiate ourselves from? Because what can we do to differentiate ourselves from Pixar? Well, because the other thing that a lot of DreamWorks films do is they don't really do songs. They do songs, but it's
Yeah.
not. They're almost like musicals without songs.
Yeah.
If you compare
Yeah.
something like The Lion King to The Road to El Dorado, it's very much
Mhm.
this is a musical. It's a retelling of a story, and this is what it is. Whereas Road to El Dorado, it's like it's an adventure film, but there's also there's a song in it. And maybe that's what it is. Monsters versus Aliens is it's there to entertain. Maybe a cynical person would say it's there to sell tickets and merchandise and all that sort of stuff. And it is funny. I do think it's got redeeming qualities.
It
So
is funny.
so
It is
perhaps it's
funny.
not got perhaps the intention is not there to emotionally involve you, but
Of course.
also it is a missed opportunity in terms of what it could have done in that sense, if that's what you're looking for, which I think both of us usually are.
So we'll move on now to talking about the critical reception. So I haven't seen this, Josh. I'm going to hazard a guess. So I think you said at the beginning that you did pick it because you actually do think it's quite underrated. Is that right? Okay. So if we think about that, if you think it's underrated, you did quite like it, but your understanding of the flaws with it, I wonder if I'm going to guess that this got a 6.
6.
And I'm going to go for a bang on 6.
Bang
so
on
we're talking 6 or 60% if we're thinking about Rotten Tomatoes.
And what would you give it?
Probably about
that. 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wouldn't watch this again.
No?
Like it's got no rewatchability factor for me. I'm so sorry, Josh. But yeah, it's just if
it's
I'm
a real nice podcast we had once.
No. The problem is, if you're going to compare it to other films that are animated in this way, and you can't help it, but you do. Like, again, I already said it. I've watched Frozen about 1,000,000 times. Like, I think it's amazing. I love it. All the early Disney stuff, seen that over and over again. Finding Nemo, Toy Story, etc., etc. And then this, it just missed the mark for me. So yeah, probably 6. And then maybe I would give it about that too.
Okay. Well, according to IMDb at the time of recording, it gets 6.4 out of 10, so 64%. According to Rotten Tomatoes, the audience give it 59%.
Ooh,
and the critics give it, quite surprising actually, 73%.
Oh, wow.
So that averages out at about 65%. So for me, it's not hugely underrated, but I would say this is a solid 7 out of 10 film.
Okay.
So I would say it is underrated. Now, in terms of it being underseen, I think it did quite well at the box office, but I don't think it has much longevity. I might be wrong. I don't have children, but I don't know if many people are sitting down as families and watching this now, because that's the relentless nature of the churn of these films. If you don't watch, Kung Fu Pandas 1 through 3, it's replaced with How to Train Your Dragon, it's replaced with Big Hero 6. There's always the next thing that the kids are going to love, get the toys, get the, all that sort of thing. Anyway, back to the point. I think 65 is a little bit underrated because I think this is a solid 7. I'd probably give it higher, but having talked about what we talked about, I can see some flaws. So I'm going to say it's slightly underrated. What would you say to that?
I am going to allow this because I think...
Because you've been really mean about it and you've hurt my feelings.
That also, but you have made a compelling argument, and I can't disagree with the things that you've said. It's just that I didn't have the same reaction and I wasn't connected to it in that way. So for me, that is overrated. If we're going to say 65 and a 7 would be overrated for me. But I'll be kind to you, Josh, and it can slide on in to the underrated vault.
It's by the skin of its teeth, Monsters vs. Aliens.
Skin of its teeth.
It's walking in there, people are going, what are you doing here?
Yeah, exactly. Speed 2's like, what the fuck?
And everyone's going, listen, they've had a chat. Mum and Dad have spoken.
Yeah.
They said that I can come and play with you, and everyone's like, but he's so lame. Anyway, yeah, it's underrated, and I'm happy about that. So there we go. By the skin of its teeth, Monsters vs. Alien makes it into the underrated vault, just about. Alice, your turn to pick next week.
Ooh.
What are we watching next week?
So, something a little bit different from Monsters vs. Aliens. And I think, no, don't groan, Josh, don't groan. I think something maybe a little bit different from most of the films that we've done on this podcast. But
intriguing.
Next week, Next week, we are going to be watching Enduring Love.
Okay.
You pulled a face. Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, you
Okay.
pulled a
Well,
face.
you'll
I don't
find
know
out,
if it was
won't
good,
you?
if it was bad, or
You'll
oh my
find
God,
out, won't
oh
you?
my God. Now I'm literally on the edge
No,
of
I'm
my
not.
seat.
I'm not gonna. I will tell you when we record the episode.
Don't say anything. Don't say anything. It's more exciting that way. Ooh, how exciting!
Am I going to go away and endure enduring love, or am I going to go away and enjoy enduring love?
Oh God!
Find out next week. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. If there's any new ones that they come out with this year, we'll probably be on that as well eventually.
We'll be on them. Our TikTok adventure is going really well.
Desperate for your love and attention. Validate us. Yeah, if you'd like to get in touch with us, if you'd like to give us a rating on Spotify and iTunes, we'd very much appreciate it. We'll be back next week with Enduring Love. Alice Oliver, thank you very much for joining me as ever.
Oh, thank you, Josh. Pleasure as always.
And it's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.